Okay, well, we're back again, literally, because I was here an hour ago talking about something very different than what I'm going to be talking about now. And as advertised, we have Rebecca Hardy, who is the president of Texans for Vaccine Choice. And let me just quickly read Rebecca's bio, and then we'll go a couple of layers deeper here. As a speech language pathologist, Rebecca has encountered many children with profound vaccine injuries. These experiences created a passion for protecting others from these kinds of negative health outcomes, which she has turned into activism. Rebecca is one of the original three founders of TFVC and currently serves as president, overseeing the trajectory of the vaccine choice movement in Texas. Rebecca is dedicated to protecting medical liberties and informed consent for all Texans. So, welcome to the show, Rebecca, and a quick shout out to Joan, who hooked us up and got
Yes.
us all together.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you for having me on, Robert. And I agree. I last week I had dinner with Joan, and she's just a delight.
yeah, she's great, totally great, and a real supporter to the cause, and
Yes.
courageous, unafraid,
Well, she
like
is on the
yourself.
she's on the front lines in a kind of a
Yep,
different capacity, but she's 100% on the front lines as a biologic dentist. And
absolutely. Absolutely.
yep.
Well, let's talk about your path and how you got to this moment in time where you and I are talking. So you start off as a speech pathologist. We're working with kids with autism, and sort of what flipped the tumblers in your brain.
That is, I love this story. I mean, it's an equal parts sad story, but we embrace the stories that lead you to your mission and your passion, right? And so, yes, back in the, I'm going to age myself just a little bit here in the early 2000s, I was graduating from graduate school with my master's in speech language pathology, and I was starting my practice. And there were just a lot of moms that were coming in to my office with vaguely similar stories of normal development in their young children arrested by a shot visit. And at the time, I mean, I was what I would call a vaccine agnostic. I had not had a vaccine in eons. The topic did not have the religious fervor that it has today. It just was not something that was talked about. And even with all of those cards kind of stacked against me, I remember going home at night thinking, something's not right here. And, again, even if half these moms are wrong, it's too many. Something's there. And so fast forward several years later, and, I meet my husband. Many years later, we are starting our family. And those seeds that were planted so many years earlier really started to germinate, and it made me do a deep dive into what's really going on here. And it didn't take me much research at all to figure out, oh, this is a multi-layered um, system of that's maybe doesn't have our best interest in mind.
Right.
So my husband and I made very different vaccination choices for our two daughters. And then fast forward even more years, in 2015, we had a state representative out of the Dallas area in Texas who filed a mandate bill that would have removed the exemptions that Texas school children have enjoyed for decades. And, none of us had politically engaged before. I kind of say I was just a quiet speech pathologist with my head down, and we all laughed and laughed and laughed about that comment. But it just takes one bill to wake you up to say, you know what? Maybe these yahoos in Austin don't have my best interest in mind either. And so we kind of, stormed the gates of Austin and, the Austin Capitol building and said, not on our watch. You're not going to pass this bill. And not only did we kill that mandate bill, but we killed about 15 other bills that would have infringed on Texans' rights to make their own informed vaccination decisions. And, a lot of us kind of went back home after that first session in 2015 and said, okay, we came, we saw, we conquered. And thankfully, some state reps invited us to coffee and essentially said, We've never seen moms take over the Capitol building like this. You are on to something, and you really need to consider organizing into something very official, because unfortunately, this issue is not going away. And, you know, those are just what prophetic words those were, because that was 5 years before COVID was even a word anybody had on the tips of their tongue.
Right.
And had we not been organized and been a well-known force in Texas politics, I mean, it was already bad enough in Texas, but it would have been an absolute runaway train. We were the backstop to a lot of this in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to go even deeper into that story. Were you at I think it was 2015 or 2016 showing of Vaxxed in North Austin? Were you there?
I was at the premiere in North Texas, in the Dallas area. It
Okay.
was
All right.
May of 2016.
Right.
Yes, I
Right. So
was.
I was at the one in Austin, and it was mind blowing, right? Because I know they probably did the same thing. Dell was there, and the people that were part of the movie were there. Andrew was there,
Holly,
and
Tommy, all of those.
right, right.
Mhm.
So I think it was Dell. The lights came on in the theater, and Dell said, "How many of you here have vaccine injured children?" Right, and I turned and looked around behind me, and it was almost all moms, and all these hands were up in the air. Right, I'm like, wow, like these women had the courage to come to a movie like that and try to understand what happened,
Mhm.
and you know how they can move forward. And I'm sure some of them may have even filtered into your group at some point along the way. That's a very hard moment for a parent, to come to this realization that there's a pretty strong chance that, you know based on their own sort of trust, right, in the medical system, that they may have made a wrong choice or a wrong decision. Maybe in God's plan, there's something else going on. I don't know. I'm not omniscient, right? But and I'm sure you've run into that. How do you work with, or I know you're not a counselor, but how do you work with people, women, mothers that have that light bulb go off in their head and like, oh my God, what do I do now?
Robert, that is such a thoughtful question, and it's something we are faced with daily here. As we are a staff of 5 here at Texans for Vaccine Choice, we're all moms, and it is a sobering thing to think about that you as a mother, of course, were doing what you thought was best for your child, right? I mean, nobody seeks out vaccination to harm their child. These individuals trusted their doctors. They trusted that these products are safe and effective always for all children. That's the drum that's beat, and so you are absolutely right. It becomes more of a ministry most days here at Texans for Vaccine Choice than a job, because the devastation, I mean, it is, we have a whole generation of children that have been harmed by this very aggressive vaccination schedule. Not all
Right.
of them, it's not all, but to your point, I have also in this post-COVID world adopted this informal polling whenever I go to speaking events. We go all I my team and I go all over the state with our presentations, and I always start with let me see a raise of hands if you or a loved one has been injured by any vaccine. And it is nearly half the audience these days. And that's not a audience like Vaxxed, which these are people that were already predisposed to being very interested in vaccine safety. These are just monthly meetings of your regular, you know, local political group or your Republican women group. Or last week I was in Belton at at this local Tea Party group.
Right.
And so and I always tell people, look around at all these hands raised, because the pharmaceutical industry likes to say that vaccine injury is 1 in a million, right? Well, even if half the people that just raised their hands are wrong, we just blew that statistic out of the water,
Right.
and when as a society, did we decide to stop believing moms? I mean, isn't that how God ensures the continuation of the human race? He instills this
Right.
instinct in mothers to know
Right.
every twitch, breath, stretch, babble, everything about their babies. And they know when something is different. And it's just despicable, really. There's no other word for it except maybe wicked when we don't believe people when they have been injured or their children have been injured. And, if they say we have this federal statute that says vaccine injuries exist, we can dive into that a little bit more. But I just want to make the point of this: vaccine injury is not an urban legend. This is a statutorily codified, program in our federal statutes. And so why, where's the National Day of Remembrance for the vaccine injured? We
Good
just had
question.
an entire month dedicated to celebrating who you sleep with, right? But
Right.
why do we not have at least a day for these people that, according to Big Pharma, took one for the team? But no, instead, these people are silenced, they're censored, they're gaslit, and they are left to their own devices to attempt to recover. And it's wicked.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's take people through your day, right? You get up in the morning, you have your routine. Uh, let's say it's in session. And for
Oh,
people that don't know, uh, here in Texas, it's every other year where we have session. That's when all the lawmakers come to Austin, and people like Rebecca get to go office to office and try to persuade them that this vaccine schedule, which is aggressively pursued every year by Big Pharma, right, is not in the best interest of our children. So, walk us through a session day for you.
that is, I love that. I always say, who needs soap operas when you have Texas politics? So,
Right.
um, a day in session it's really a snapshot in time each day, depending on what bills are getting filed, what bills may have a committee hearing, where we need to apply a little bit more pressure to maybe get a good bill, the momentum it needs through the sausage making process, if you will. And so we would maybe start waking up with Michelle Evans, my political director, and I will open up a Google Doc and craft our action alert with a very concise, this bill, either for better or for worse, has some sort of action. This is why that's either good or bad. And these are the people you need to call and email. And here's a sample message to get you going. And so I just want to make that very clear. Our action alerts are always very turnkey and efficient. And my favorite part of any day in the Capitol is when I'm stuck in an elevator with a state representative and they say, could you have your people stop calling me? And I always say, so you're telling me it works. So
Right. Right.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have, those action alerts that we get out in as close to real time as possible via our newsletter, on socials, maybe via text as well. And if it happened, and usually those do coincide with a committee hearing. And so we will be on the scene as well with our testimony ready to go, our supporting documents ready to go. And they're right when the doors open to sign up early, because I know this is going to shock your listeners, but usually in a long agenda for a committee, the vaccine bills get heard last. So
Right.
there's been many
Right.
a night where we are there well past midnight, and it's annoying and frustrating, but they try to get us to leave and get us to give up. And guess what? We never have, and we won't.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. I've heard about that. I've heard that it's either like really at the end of the session, right, or at the end of the day, or sometimes both. So it's really a marathon that you're involved with, which
yeah.
is pretty amazing. Um, so do you have a positive story of turning one of these people who at first were really reluctant and said, I don't believe this, Get out of my office. I've got, the people from Merck, they're not Merck, but they're Merck's lobbies or whatever. I've got them and they've brought the science into my office, convinced me. Have you had success stories where you've turned some of these people?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look even at we release after every session when we have scored floor votes, we release a report card, and you can kind of see very clearly where these individuals have landed. Some, our last really robust report card was in 2017. And so we had from 2017 to 2023, we had 21 scored floor votes in 2023, which was very historic and it was incredible. But not all the people are still there from in 2023 that were there in 2017, but you can see on those report cards how people have moved either more pro freedom when it comes to the issues of informed consent, or worse, and perhaps they have been captured by the industry. And we've had some really outspoken champions. I mean, one example is Representative Brian Harrison. He's in Ellis County, south of Dallas here. He was the chief of staff of HHS under the Trump administration. And so he was in all of those very, very early meetings on warp speed and everything. And he just shakes his head and says, this vaccine was always about access and availability, but not the heavy-handed mandates that we saw when Biden came in. And I have just so appreciated his very outspoken voice on this, because he came back to Texas, won in a special election, and within hours of being sworn in with 8 days to go in a special session in 2021, filed the COVID Vaccine Freedom Act. And he kept filing it session after session, special session after special session, because he fundamentally knew that these coercive mandates had no place in Texas, and they were happening here. And I mean, I can tell you, my phone and my email blew up with countless stories of people being faced with the just horrible stories of having to choose between a medical procedure they didn't want and their livelihood. And he worked hard on that bill, and unfortunately, due to the many, many games that are played in our Texas House, it didn't pass in 2023 in the regular session, or 21 in all of those legislative sessions either. That summer after the 2023 session, TFVC mounted a very robust, multi-pronged effort to get these mandates, banning these mandates onto a special session call. Governor Abbott had said that he was going to be calling numerous special sessions. And with a special session, the governor sets the agenda. He sets the call. And thankfully, over the summer, due to the tireless efforts of TFVC leaving no stone unturned, we achieved banning those COVID mandates in Texas added to a special session call. And finally, in August, got that over the finish line with the bill going into effect in February 2024. I want to just make it very clear. SB 7, that bill that did finally pass and go into effect in February 2024, was a victory. It was needed. But I also want to make it very clear to your listeners that this highlights just how much work we still have to do in Texas, because why that bill was not passed the second these vaccines were available, why that was not effective sometime in 2021 is a real shame on the leadership in our Texas legislature, because the damage had already been done by the time February 24 had rolled around. Like I said, the people that had already been impacted by these heavy-handed mandates had already made a choice whether to be fired or to, play Russian roulette with their health. And so was probably a longer answer than you were wanting, but
no, it's a good answer. It's a good answer. So, okay. This happens every now and then when I do a stream. I get frozen on my end. So don't go away.
okay.
Stay there. You can talk to the listeners, viewers, and give them like contact information and anything else that's pertinent to getting in touch with you or getting in touch with perhaps people in their own state, you don't know everybody, but maybe encouraging them to do that. I will be back within 15 seconds. Okay. So
Okay.
don't go away.
No, sir.
Okay.
All right. The audience is mine. So we are at texansforvaccinechoice.com. Our website really is a treasure trove of resources, and we have an entire page dedicated to your exemption rights in Texas. We also have a contact us button. So if you have a question or if we can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our hearts really are to serve the community in Texas. We get emails nearly daily with questions that we probably know the answer to your vaccine or exemption question in Texas, and would be happy to help. The other thing that I want to plug right quick is our outreach coordinator program. And this is a program that really is setting the nationwide standard for effective outreach and how to reach your communities for liberty, specifically, obviously, with TFVC, it's medical liberty, but this program really can be applied to any issue. And it's all about building bridges with love, with both in the community and with your neighbors and your families, but also with our electeds in every level of government. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that program, that too is on our website.
Good. Thank you. Well done. So I'm back. And one of the things that are we coming up in session this year? Is that
So January 25 is when session starts. In my mind, it starts tomorrow. We are recording in July of 24, but it will be upon us momentarily.
okay? What we talked about this briefly before we hit the live button. The vaccine schedule, or just the schedule you guys are going to be dealing with in 2025. What does that look like?
So currently the vaccine schedule, we have the 2024 schedule right now, and even that has changed a few times already just in the first 7 months of the year. We are up to a child born today, once they graduate from high school, will have received 81 doses of vaccines if their parents are following the CDC recommended schedule.
Wow. 81. And are they planning to add more? I mean, how much more can they add, right?
Well, vaccine science is the only industry where the only answer for failure is more. And
Right.
so, when you see all of these boosters continuing to be added, it's because they're not working. And so they keep on adding more. That's usually where the sweet spot is on this schedule, is just the additional dosing of current vaccines. Although in 2024, we have had the addition of the RSV vaccine, both for pregnant women and newborns as well. So that's been a new addition. And then just recently, they approved a new concoction of the pneumonia vaccine, where previously it had 13 strains of pneumonia in it, and now it's approved with 21 strains of pneumonia. So, that's not necessarily changing the doses administered, but it definitely changes the strains administered number.
Right. I don't know if you have any insight into this. Maybe you do, because again, this is a big part of your life. Um, are vaccines generational? What I mean by that is, let's say your parents got vaccinated. You were born in maybe 1990, right?
Okay.
And so the vaccine schedule by 1990 is getting pretty hot, right? And then there's a pretty good chance that maybe your parents got vaccinated, right? Right. So does that kind of transport genetically? Like, if you don't vaccinate your child, right? Is there any data that says there could be some either
Like genetic.
malignant or phantom strains or something going on that's passed down? Have you looked into this at all?
I have sat through presentations by medical doctors discussing this issue. And so I don't want to do a huge disservice to the actual medical science on that. I try to walk my fine line with not giving medical advice and such. But I will tell you this, which is related to what you asked. Our parents' schedule had about 3, depending on, how old your parents are, between
Right.
3 and 5 vaccines. Growing up, my schedule had about 10. I'm a
Right.
child of the 70s. I will admit that proudly. And so even in the 80s, the 1983 schedule included 24 doses.
Right.
And so when we go from 1983 schedule with 24 doses to the 2024 schedule with 81 doses, my children are not going any, potential genetic damage that I may pass down to them. It's going to be very much so look different than a fully vaccinated child of today because of the just explosive schedule they have received. So yes, my understanding is that there is quite a bit of research regarding just how long it kind of takes to remove any sort of genetic implications from
Yeah,
vaccination.
yeah, yeah. That's where I was going with this, right? And
Yeah.
then you get stacking, right? You have the previous generation, and you have new, more aggressive vaccine schedules on top of that, and I think we're just really in uncharted territory here, right? This is almost like a sci-fi film, where all this goes.
Yeah. Well, and Robert, this
Yeah.
is an untested schedule. I mean, this is
Right.
where my mind is blown at what passes for vaccine safety science in America because vaccines are classified as biologics. They're not classified as drugs. Just think about, a lot of your listeners are probably on some prescription medications. I mean, I think it's like 70 to 90% of all Americans are on at least one daily maintenance medication. And every single one of those pills went through a rigorous, at least 10-year, double-blind, placebo-based, randomized controlled trial, testing. It's the gold standard of testing for any product. But vaccines have been classified as biologics, which means that the safety
Oh,
testing standard is about the same at the same level as, say, blood products.
right.
And so these are products that are essentially mandated on our nation's children with a very low standard of testing. On
Right.
top of that, these vaccines are tested individually. So, and we can dive into how shoddy that individual vaccine testing is, where there's no true placebo being used. They use another vaccine as the placebo. A placebo by definition is an inert substance
Right.
and that cannot cause a reaction. And that's not what's happening here. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we could dive deep into that shoddy testing, but these vaccines are certainly not ever tested in the combinations they are given in real life in pediatricians' offices across the nation. I mean, just take for instance, say the 4th-month shot visit. I have my little cheat sheet here. You are getting rotavirus, DTaP, Hib, PVC, and IPV, the polio vaccine, all on the 4-month shot visit. So you've got, this little baby's legs and arms are all shot up, and that has never been tested for safety and efficacy. And much less the schedule in its entirety. They refuse to do this testing.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember sitting in on a Del Bigtree talk, and he really specifically zoomed in on this whole idea of testing because, again, how do you're dealing with a baby, right? Like, how do you really test a baby? I mean, it's just mind blowing, mind boggling.
And just think
Um,
about this, Robert. If you lined up 100 people with, say, strep throat, of
yeah,
men, women, all races, large, small, babies, linebackers, we would never give them all the same injection of
right,
penicillin, say.
right, right,
10% of them would just drop dead because of their reaction to penicillin. We also wouldn't give the, I don't know, 9-month-old with strep the same dosing of antibiotics as the 400-pound linebacker. No other medicine is this one size fits all cookie cutter, everything's the safe and effective for all people all the time. No, but that is what happens with vaccines. That newborn baby is given on day 1 of life the hepatitis B vaccine. That is
Right.
the exact same vaccine that would be given to the 400-pound linebacker.
Wow.
And so it's mind-blowing. It really is. And just think
Yeah.
about, I'll just add this other a little extra layer to my own example. Hepatitis B is a disease of the sexually promiscuous or the unsafe drug users.
That's right.
I don't know about you, but my newborns were not participating in any of that
Right.
behavior.
Right. Right. I mean, when just as a personal aside, like I found out, like we didn't vaccinate my son initially, and me and his mother were on the same page with that. And I remember being in a hospital in San Diego, and she's there, he's there, fresh out of the oven, and here comes this woman coming by, with a little thing on the vaccine schedule, right? Or and I'm thinking, wow, look at this. And what was really interesting about the woman is that she was, I don't know, like this kind of old candy striper, right? Kind of like, sort of grandma. And I'm thinking, well, isn't this interesting? They got a little grandma person coming by and bringing this in, right? Because if you're a mother and you've just given life to a child, and your brain is like, I really want to protect this child, right? And here comes Grandma Candy Striper with, here you go, here's the information. Immediately, in my mind, the mother is looking at this person who is kind of older, right? Go, oh, okay, thank you, right? Because she's vulnerable and she wants to make sure the baby's okay. And maybe it was an anomaly. Maybe we just got Grandma Candy Striper, right? But they picked that moment in time because moms are vulnerable
Yep.
and they think this is the best thing that they can do. We're talking like day freaking one.
If not hour one, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And I think you bring up a really good point, Robert. The kind of the manipulation
Yes.
and the fear-based tactics, it is never ending. But how extra level of, just gross is it when they are taking advantage of these mothers that just, got an entire human out of their bodies. And,
Right.
it doesn't sit right with me
Yep.
either.
Yep. Yep. Let's talk about your relationship with the opposition because I'm sure you cross paths with them at the Capitol. What is that like?
It's gotten a lot easier over the years. I don't know what is in me that loves everything about session, right? But I do love it, and I love it because the momentum is ours. I just this is not really what you asked, but I just want to make this point really clear, and that is, you know, the headwinds are in our favor right now, and it's because of so many people woke up during COVID about just how much undue influence Big Pharma has in nearly every aspect of their lives, right?
Right.
And while I want to say, we are 100% taking advantage of that awakening, I want to make it clear it's not a taking advantage in some sort of just nefarious way. It is, I just want to make it clear. I don't wish this COVID response on anyone. We saw tyranny, we saw devastation. It's just all of it was so, I mean, it's just wicked. I don't even know what other word to use for it, right?
Wicked is a good starter.
Yes, we had people being called non-essential. I mean, all of it. It's just so despicable, right? So if Texans for Vaccine Choice can provide some redemption for that, then, here we are, use us. And so that's really the heart behind when I say we have the headwinds and the momentum ours, because we owe it to those that were in some ways just horrifically impacted by the COVID response to redeem their stories. We really do. And so in the post-COVID world in the Capitol during session, I mean, it's kind of funny, honestly, when we have committee hearings and, there's in the HHS committee in the Senate, they meet on the Senate floor. And so they kind of reconfigure the tables for this committee hearing, and you are called up 4 at a time. And so, you could be sitting right, sandwiched in between two people on the other side of the bill that you're testifying for. And you
Right.
just kind of, you're nice, and it's whatever. It's not a big deal. But it's so fascinating to hear our opposition now, because before, in those early sessions, it would just make me so nervous, right? And now I almost like am internally just chuckling, because they're not sending their best. And if they are sending their best, then, I'm very optimistic about where we are heading as a
Wow.
mission.
That's a really interesting insight, right? That's a very interesting insight.
There was one day, I just want to point out, in the 2023 session in March, Chairwoman Colkhorst, she's the chairwoman of the HHS committee, where the vast majority of our bills went to in the Senate, total vaccine choice champion. And she had come to us early in the session and essentially said, like, what if we had, vaccine COVID day in HHS? If we do this, can you bring your crew? I want to, make sure that your experts are here. And we had this entire like wall of the Senate chamber filled with pilots, doctors, every military. I mean, we had it all. And it was just so amazing to see our doctors showing up too in their white coats, because for the longest time we had the like white coat brigade is what we had to fight against in the Capitol. They would have their Texas Medical Association would have their monthly lobby days, and
right.
it looks really impressive when they're taking their picture with all their white coats and everything. And it's like, you know what? We've got our white coats too now, and I'm always so grateful when they show up. And we ran the table that day. It was about, I don't know, 8 to 10 bills that were heard in one day in HHS, and we just knocked it out of the park with our people. And they, like I said, they did not bring their best.
So in a weird way, COVID has kind of helped you, right?
I mean, there were silver linings. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I don't wish any of that on anyone, but if
Right.
we can see the silver linings, I'm here for it.
Right. It's another way to look at it, because it seems to have buttressed your efforts there. The thing that comes to my mind is, I think of war, and if you have a group that is defending their homeland and their territory, right, they're going to be way more invested in defending that versus a group of hired mercenaries who have no stake in the game except what they're getting financially from the people that are paying them to be there, unless they are rabidly like involved in, their world. So it's not just money, but they're rabidly against what you're doing. It just feels like that over time, you're going to wear them down and you're going to win, because you have, as the French would say, the raison d'etre, right? You have the reason for being, and they don't.
Yeah.
They are there for a paycheck, and that is a big thing.
You nailed it, Robert. That is exactly right. It is a job to them. And for us, it is a mission. It is a ministry, like I said earlier. And we do not, we won't understand on this side of heaven, I don't think, why this mantle has been laid on Texans for Vaccine Choice. But we're here to be used until God calls us on to either another mission or home. And it's now that said, we would love to work ourselves out of a job, right? We would love to put all this vaccine tyranny to bed once and for all in Texas. So we are not here to exist. I will tell you, on a very personal level, there's a long list of things I'd rather be doing, right? But for whatever reason, God has called me and my team to carry this, and we are here. And you're right. It is, no one loves our children as much as we do. Not Big Pharma, not those electeds, no one. We have that love. And that, what's interesting though, I just want to give a shout out to the men, because this mission has historically been very mom driven. And now in the, this kind of post-COVID world we're living in, the dads are showing up. And I mean, we'd said for the first, 5-ish, 6-ish years of this mission, where are the dads? And I'm telling you, they're coming. And that's also much needed reinforcements.
That's great. That's really great because, you know, when dads show up, right, it's like, uh-oh, right. Not that we want to diminish your efforts, right? Right. But when the dads show up, it's like, oh man, the dudes are here now. Right. And
Robert,
yeah.
as much as I wish it didn't make a difference, it does. And
Yeah.
and they have a very powerful voice, and it's much needed.
Yeah. Well, hooray for that.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us today before we send you back into your busy schedule and your family life?
Well, I just want to encourage everyone and just say, I hope some of what we've talked about today has encouraged your listeners to action. That's what TFVC is about. We are not here to just get together and howl at the moon together. I mean, there's a lot to howl at the moon about, but let's turn that into effective advocacy. So I would love for your listeners to click that sign up button on our website, texansforvaccinechoice.com. We send out a weekly newsletter. We call it the TFVC Tuesday. We won't spam you. During session, those emails may come a little bit more often, but it's always because there's an action alert. I want to make that clear. And so just come and find your role. We have that. I know I plugged the outreach coordinator program a little bit earlier, and that really has been what I would call a missing piece to our organization, because let's pretend that we could wave our magic wand and pass any bill we wanted to in Austin tomorrow. It doesn't solve the hearts and minds issue that we are faced with in our communities, in our neighborhoods. And that outreach arm is kind of like how we are bridging that gap between our legislative branch and just the, how this looks in the local communities. And
Right.
so there is a role for everyone. We would love to have your listeners lock arms with us. It really does take an army to get things over the finish line at the Capitol. And, it's going to be all hands on deck. And we'd love to have them join us.
Right. Good. Great. I when you were talking about that, I thought the hearts and minds, it's like the culture war, and I think it's really important that not only do you achieve a degree of legislative victory, but along the way, people's eyes open up and they're much more inclined to not just say no to big pharma or vaccine, but it's like, well, what other areas of my life am I being told to do something that I don't really have to comply with?
Yep.
Right. So it could be a real epiphany, awakening for a lot of folks. And if you're not in Texas, you may want to still sign up for it because you can get an idea of what Rebecca and her team are doing. And you may want to implement it in your own state, or maybe there are people in your state that are already doing it and you may know them and you can turn them on to what they're doing. Right. So just because you're not in Texas, and you'll be informed as well. Right. I mean, you will also inform people, not just about, hey, meet up at the Capitol at 10 o'clock on Wednesday. There's information in your newsletters, right?
Yep. We try to make our newsletters count. So we have, current news. We have always, good. Even I was working on next Tuesday's newsletter. We have a reminder to order those exemptions for enrollment because they can take a couple of weeks to arrive, especially during this, high request season. And so we have that. We even have a little how-to on how to opt your children out of vaccine-related curriculum if that's your choice as a parent. And so we really do provide helpful information. We have events all over the state. I would love to see your listeners' smiling faces. Next Thursday, I'll be in Hearst. So if anybody's listening from Hearst, check out our website and meet me there.
Cool.
And I just wanted to say just plug the exemptions. And that is, we have an entire page dedicated to your exemption rights in Texas. And if your kids are involved in daycare, Mother's Day out, K through 12 school, or any facility in higher education, our exemption FAQ page will walk you through your rights and how to get the appropriate paperwork if needed.
Well, that's really great because I got to tell you, the exemption process is clunky. And when I first came here, I was grateful that they had it, but it was not real streamlined.
You know,
Right?
Robert, it is time for our exemption process to come into the modern era. This
I'm telling
process,
you,
it is we are in 2024 and we still have a hard copy mailed system in Texas.
that's
Like
right.
it
That's right.
blows my mind. Now,
Right.
I just want to clarify this exemption process was codified in 2003 when the internet was barely a thing, right? And so,
Right.
it made sense at the time, but it is definitely time to bring this process into the modern era. I would go one step further and even say this: why we need exemptions to opt out of
Thank
optional
you.
medical procedures
Thank you.
is
Thank
also
you.
something that needs to be put to bed. But you know what?
Thank
I mean,
you.
that's probably a bridge too far at this moment in time, but that's where Texans for Vaccine Choice is headed.
I just want to share why I think it's important to streamline that process. If you are in a co-parenting relationship with another parent, right? And one parent is kind of on the fence and the other parent is like, hey, let's get this form filled out. And the other parent thinks that it's just too laborious and too clunky. And it's that little hurdle that keeps that other parent from just following through. It creates a terrible rift in the co-parenting relationship. And it makes it easier for that parent to say, let's get the vaccine
I
versus,
totally agree.
right?
100%. I mean, and also every time I go onto the Department of Health State Services website to request exemptions for my kids, I always in my mind say, if it pleases the Queen, may I please have these magical papers to opt my kids out of optional medical procedures? I mean, why there's this hurdle to exercise my basic human rights, if not religious rights? And it's so un-Texan. I want to make that very clear. And
Right.
we have stories every year where kids are miss 2 weeks of school because of yes, we, as many reminders as we put out, parents should be requesting those exemptions and such, but we're busy and we shouldn't have to our kids' enrollment should not be held hostage because a state agency takes 3 weeks to mail this ridiculous form.
Absolutely. Thanks for clarifying that and being on the same page with me, because issue. All right, Rebecca, let's do a little high five here. High five. Good job. Thanks for coming on the show, and keep up the good work. And may you stay healthy, vital, and strong, because we need you. And if you get down into the hill country, Fredericksburg, just let Joan know, and we'll come by and see you.
Will do. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me, Robert.
Okay. Bye for now, Rebecca.
Bye.
All right. That was Rebecca Hardy. And was she great? Absolutely great. All right. We're going to sign off now. This is like the third hour that I've been streaming today. So you guys have a fantastic weekend. And I'll see you back here on Sunday Night Astro Live. God bless you. Treat each other well. Remember, you have everything you need inside of you. Bye for now.